What's up, everybody? Josh Doring here. It's already time to get our World Cup previews underway. We're going to be breaking down all 32 teams competing this winter in Qatar. We're going group by group in alphabetical order in those groups, which puts us in an interesting place to start with Ecuador. This is Ecuador's fourth appearance, also made it in 2002, 2006, 2014, reached the round of 16 in 2006. That is their best finish to date. As I mentioned, we're going group by group. So Ecuador in Group A with Qatar, the Netherlands, and Senegal. A very good qualifying for Ecuador, finished fourth in CONMEBOL, which is the South American region, behind Brazil, Argentina, and Uruguay. And that's always kind of the question with South America is you expect those three teams I just mentioned to make it, but who is the best of the rest? You've got so many teams with so much talent there, and they're really just kind of a jumbled mess usually. But Ecuador able to be that other team to get that automatic qualifying spot, the fourth and final one in CONMEBOL. Before we get into their squad and what to expect at the World Cup, do want to address that the most pressing thing with this team and why I said they're such an interesting place to start is it's not a guarantee they will actually be participating in the World Cup. There is currently a FIFA investigation underway after Chile launched a complaint saying that Byron Castillo, who played in 8 World Cup qualifiers for Ecuador, is not actually eligible. There's questions about where he was born. It's a whole mess. We don't need to get into all of the details. But there are a couple things to note here. One, if FIFA rules Byron Castillo was ineligible and Ecuador fielded an ineligible player, the most likely result of that, or at least I should say a potential result of that, is Ecuador losing their spot because they would be forfeited as 3-0 losses. And the way this all works out, because of the games Castillo played, 2 of which were against Chile, Chile would jump Ecuador and all the teams between Ecuador and Chile in the standings to get that fourth automatic qualifying spot from CONMEBOL. Ecuador would be way down the table. Everything else would stay the same. These 2 teams would essentially just switch spots. So yes, Chile absolutely has something to gain from launching this complaint. Now, we'll have to see how it sounds like there's some expectation this is going to get resolved in the next month or so. There's a chance that it doesn't get to that extreme and maybe there's a fine involved and that's it or something of that nature. But there is precedent, this is the second part I wanted to highlight, there is precedent for teams forfeiting World Cup qualifiers in South America. Haven't seen it to quite this extreme before, but this would not be the first time something like this has happened and it has resulted in forfeits. So that is the big caveat here with Ecuador, and of course they just happen to be first on the list. Nevertheless, until they're actually removed from the World Cup, we are going to proceed as though they are going because they did qualify. And so with these previews, we're just going to kind of take a look at some key players, other things to know, and sort of give a nice little synopsis of what to expect from them. So key player-wise, DC United's Michael Estrada was this team's leading scorer during qualifying. He's currently on loan at DC United. This is a very different Ecuador team than the team you might remember from 2014. The one guy who's kind of bridging this all together is Ener Valencia. That's your big name who's got the big-time European experience, spent years in the Premier League. He is still around, still contributed during qualifying. More of a super sub now, particularly club-wise. But he's seen it all, especially internationally. He was the guy scoring goals at that 2014 World Cup for Ecuador. And there are also plenty of MLS connections I want to highlight because this is definitely a team in transition, which makes them really interesting. Some of your players who contributed big time during qualifying with MLS connections, Carlos Guejo, who is now back in the Bundesliga, but spent a couple years with FC Dallas, was one of the best defensive mids in MLS, a very good player. Javier Arteaga, Seattle Sounders, center back, MLS tried and true, just won CONCACAF Champions League. Alan Franco in Charlotte, Jackson Mendez, Orlando, and Romario Ibarra, who used to play for Minnesota United, all played key roles in qualifying for Ecuador. This is very much a there's been a nice sort of connection built between Ecuador and MLS and really sort of jumping into this South American young players making that move to MLS kind of thing. So MLS fans will have plenty of familiar faces in Qatar, assuming, again, Ecuador actually gets to participate. Two names to keep an eye on that you might not be as familiar with or are very quickly on the rising stars list in this sport. One is Purvis Estupiñán from Villarreal. You may recognize that name. Of course, he was playing left back for them as they made their run to the Champions League semifinals. Very, very good going forward. Doesn't necessarily give you goals and assists, but he is terrific at making progressive passes, getting the ball up the field. You saw how dangerous his crosses were. He was giving Liverpool all kinds of trouble in that second leg. He was really sort of the catalyst for those early Villarreal goals that got him back into the tie. He's sort of been on the loads of potential list and sort of moving around trying to find a home. He certainly has found one at Villarreal. Still growing into his career, hasn't reached his prime yet, but very much on his way to becoming one of the better left backs in the world. And your other young super talent is Moises Caicedo, who just made his Premier League debut, had an assist in his Premier League debut, then proceeded to score a goal for Brighton, and has been excellent since he got his opportunity. He was on loan the first half of the season. They called him back in because of a shortage in the midfield. They just needed more bodies. He's gotten his opportunity and has absolutely run with it. 20 years old. He had a team-high 4 assists in qualifying. So this is not just a guy that's going to be on this roster. This is a key player for Ecuador, again, at the age of 20, who is proving not only he belongs in the Premier League, but you go watch some of his highlights and you just watch him play. There is something different. He is electric and incredibly gifted technically. He not only is he my sort of guy whose stock is gonna rise and is gonna become a big name coming out of this tournament for Ecuador, but to me, he has an opportunity to be one of the biggest revelations of this entire tournament. That is how gifted he is and the kind of opportunity he has. It's sort of all coming together for him perfectly here. Gets his breakthrough in the Premier League. Now he's in theory going to be able to build on that heading into next Premier League season, and then gets this World Cup opportunity as well. On the whole with this team, I look at this group and no, I'm not necessarily picking them to get out. I don't think they're one of the favorites. To me, that's the Netherlands and Senegal. But one of the things you really like about this team is the way they have performed against those top 3 teams in South America. They have been very, very competitive with Brazil, Argentina, and Uruguay. So the idea of seeing Sadio Mane in Senegal or a Netherlands team that's finally back in a major tournament is not going to faze them. If anything, their shortcoming during qualifying was not doing everything they should have against the teams behind them that ended up behind them in the table. The issue was not Brazil, Argentina, and Uruguay. So they have plenty of experience seeing world-class players, performing well against world-class players. So that's something you really like heading into this tournament. I absolutely can see them getting out of this group. I'm not going to pick them to, but to me they are, and this is one of, in a World Cup of balanced groups, this one is about as well balanced as you're going to get. There are a couple I would give a slight edge to in that regard, but anything could really happen in this group. Yes, Netherlands are your favorite. Senegal have your second best roster. But Ecuador is playing really, really well. This group is meshing well together. And as I said, anytime you can get out of the South American CONMEBOL mess, you're doing something right. And the other part of this for Ecuador, too, is what is so exciting about this is, for the most part, their key players are under the age of 26, 25. Most of the guys they relied on heavily in qualifying are not even in their primes yet and have a World Cup cycle or two left after 2022 in them. So this is a really nice balance of you got some experience in there with your Enner Valencias. This is a team that is ready to compete now. But also, 2022 is absolutely setting the stage for what is to come because this team is only going to get better. And so it's that perfect sort of new era of Ecuador and sort of a nice turning point here where if you can put up a good showing in Qatar, get that World Cup experience, this is not a end of the cycle, one last go around thing. This is very much the start of a new cycle, and have this country has every opportunity to be one of the South American teams competing in the next couple of World Cups, to be right there, competitive in Copa Americas, things of that nature. So they are not going anywhere, and this will be a really good opportunity to get to know some of these names before they become even higher profile players when we get to, say, a 2026 World Cup or something of that sort. So that is our preview on Ecuador. Again, we'll be doing this for all 32 teams, so be sure to subscribe on Substack for the written previews, and of course subscribe to this YouTube channel to make sure you don't miss any of the other previews we've got coming up over the next few months.